Hello and welcome to Talking Automotive with Mark and John. My name is John Sinclair and my co-host Mark Palavestra.
Hi John, we're in our third season here at Talking Automotive, where we explore subjects in the automotive ecosystem to identify value and profit opportunities for all players in the industry. So we've got a really good subject today which focuses on business development, an area where you grow your business in the B2B and B2G space.
Yeah, it's a really interesting space and it's changed so much with COVID. So that's what really fascinates me. You can't approach it the same way as you did before COVID. So I'm looking forward to chatting more about it and jumping into it. Because Mark, you're an expert in this area. You spend a lot of time in that fleet space. So I'm really interested to hear what you've got to say.
Let's get into it. With 30 years' experience in auto logistics and state-of-the-art locations in 5 major Australian cities, Precar Fleet Services is an independent division of Precar Services, offering specialty fleet fit-outs for commercial applications ranging from simple tray and tow bar fitments to fully bespoke service body and accessory installation. With quality-assured safety, compliance and standardisation of vehicle builds, Precar Fleet Services are a premier all-in-one solutions provider for commercial vehicle fleet operators, leasing companies, and original equipment manufacturers. For further information on how Precar Fleet Services can assist in solving your commercial vehicle fit-out needs, please visit precar.com.au and click on the link to Fleet Services.
Modera is a cloud-based, AI-powered CRM and retail platform aimed at digitizing the physical process of selling a car. The Modera platform sits between existing automotive dealer and OEM systems, providing car dealerships a quick and easy shift to digital ways of working, all done entirely digitally and with total ease.
So Mark, maybe just to kick things off, can you explain what was the situation before COVID from a fleet development point of view?
Absolutely, John. Fleet has always been a bit of a dark art in the automotive space. OEMs ebb in and out of wanting to be in the fleet business, mainly because there's discounts involved, and currently we know there are supply constraints. But both you and I and those learned people in the automotive industry know that these times of constrained supply do not last forever. And the learned individuals in the industry know that 35% of all sales go to some form of B2B or B2G entity. And doing business with B2Bs and B2Gs is very different to retail. Currently, retail is king and margins are great, but we know that will change, and we know that supply will come back on, and we know that B2Bs and B2Gs still need to get vehicles. And these customers actually have long memories of whether they've been treated well or not. So it's important to not lose the skill of understanding how B2B and B2G works, and to make sure when that tide does turn, you are in a great position to take advantage of it. Because you need to do the groundwork now. You may not have the inventory, but you need to be having the conversations now in those B2B and B2G spaces, because the purchasing horizons in B2B and B2G are longer than retail. Retail's easy and beautiful. We love it. I see it, I like it, I buy it. My emotion is there. Okay, the prices have gone up. Emotionally, I want that vehicle. I'll take it, and I'll even wait for it. B2Bs and B2Gs, there's more involvement from a purchasing perspective, and there are more stakeholders involved in the purchase decision for that B2B and B2G. And especially now that electric vehicles are coming, there's a huge driver for B2B and B2Gs, particularly in the B2G space, where they need to have electric vehicles, and they will have the earlier adoption. Governments will be pushed, and we'll see if there's a change of government with a more labour-orientated government. Those governments embrace the environmental push and are prepared to pay and support those vehicles on their fleets. So be prepared to some changes there in Australia and also in the other countries that look for more liberal Democrat-style government.
Mark, I was just going to say, I think you're making a really good point there, because the important thing is to keep that marketing flame going. And you don't have to do as much as you were doing before COVID, but you need to be doing more than what your competitors are doing. And as often, most of those fleet owners will know there's a shortage of vehicles, so you don't necessarily have to promise them delivery now, but you can map out a delivery plan with them of when you expect vehicles to come. And that can go into 6 months, 12 months, 18 months delivery plans. So at least you're starting to lock those vehicles in. So when supply does come back, you're in a good, solid position. And because you've been working with those fleet owners and keeping up to date with them, you'll be in a far better position than with companies that have not.
Absolutely. The ones that have turned the tap off, the fleets will remember it, and the leasing companies will remember that. So having those conversations, even though you can't necessarily supply right now, but still being at the forefront when supply does come on, that they will embrace you first. It's very hard if you've burnt that bridge and just said, no, we're not doing fleet anymore, to then when you're desperate to go in and try to have that conversation, these people remember. It's like the jilted lover. So you jilt them and then you want to come back and take them out for dinner. Well, they're going to say, well, hang on, someone else is already providing lots of food and drink for me. So thank you, I'll go elsewhere. So it's interesting when you look at what B2B was in the past. Like traditionally, when you think of how B2B worked in the auto space, in the pre-COVID world, you had the basic tools where you had a phone, you had emails, you had social media such as LinkedIn, the professional LinkedIn, so you could work out who you wanted to target, and there were events that you would attend and meet these people. Now, these events would vary, and there's also the final one being the personal visit, where you'd actually physically visit the customer and then build that trust, rapport and relationship. Now, COVID's changed a number of things here. So you still have a phone, you still have email, and you still have LinkedIn. So you really need to be clever with what you do with those three elements. Because I'll just go back to what was the place and why it was so important to do the things that we did. But then, okay, if we cross those list items off and they're no longer available, they will come back on stream at some point, but we need to be aware of what the structure is. So you can think of conferences. So in the fleet space, AFMA, and there are a number of other fleet conferences that are fantastic opportunities for fleets to get educated, but also for interaction with the industry. Some brands embraced, other brands didn't. And also other leasing company events where salary packaging events and you get a cross-section of different customers learning about, well, what are the opportunities. The other thing was sporting events, corporate golf days, all these other events were important to get face-to-face and meet and have a conversation in a non-direct business one-on-one status or forum. Now, those forums or those events are really good to get an understanding off the cuff. They're often fireside conversations as to what you need to do to learn about what this particular customer does, what their motives are, what their likes and dislikes are, and also for them to get to know you and trust you, because trust is what it's all about. People do business with people they trust. So it's all about how do you have quality information, but also building that trust rapport so then the communication can get through effectively. So when you think about conferences, you had new model launches. Well, it's been ages since there's been any new model launches. So you're not getting large numbers of fleets visiting a proving ground somewhere or a test track somewhere where you can meet and interact with them. The other thing also is with those hospitality events, like taking people to the football or running into someone whilst you're at the football because they're hosted by a competitor client or a host of a competitor to yours. So they're great events to actually build the rapport and relationship with, but they're not around, nor are the musical concerts, etc., that you'd go to. So we've seen that the events have been cut off, the conferences have been cut off, and the new model launches have been cut off for the last 2 years. That means you're relying on phone, you're relying on email and LinkedIn and maybe some other social media, but really it's those elements, those three, that are going to be the ways that you're going to talk to the people. Yes, you're doing Zoom meetings. The Zoom meeting is an interesting adaptation to what we're used to do with a face-to-face visit. Works well for a lot of meetings for information where we know someone. But the challenge with Zoom and Teams, etc., is if I'm trying to introduce myself to you, I've got to get my foot in the door to enable you to actually connect with me in Zoom. And then once we're talking on Zoom, how are we actually going to trust each other? Now, there's lots of situations where people don't have their cameras on in a Zoom meeting. Well, you're not going to get up and pick up any of the non-verbal cues like you would in a face-to-face meeting. Very good sales consultants would rely on that belly-to-belly, face-to-face meeting to build the rapport, build the trust, and also gather all the information that are the non-verbal information.
Maybe just explain to us, because what do you look for in going, if you've got a face-to-face meeting and going in to see a client, what would be the things that you'd, from your experience, you'll be looking out for before you even go into the client or when you arrive at their business?
Well, the first thing is you do your research on who the customer is, the organisation, what the organisation's all about, and try to understand what their motives are. Now, sometimes you may not have a hell of a lot of information other than this is with the industry that they're in, or this is the government place where they're at, their jurisdiction, etc. Much research as possible makes sense. But what you may need to do is then look at, do a stake out the outside of the place. You've driven up there, you've assessed the lay of the land, you're seeing vehicles parked at the front, there may be charge stations at the front. Okay, here's an organisation that's invested in EVs. You might park out the front and there's all BMWs and Mercedes-Benzes in the front row. Well, this is a salary packaging organisation. Obviously, they're not a tool of trade. So then you want to the next step is, right, so what product offering have you got that you need to prepare yourself with? But even before you get to the point of telling your story, the most important thing is assessing the story of the customer. So how many cars are in the yard? What are they? What does the building look like? Is this a business that it's all about the image of the building, the brand, the vehicles? Are they extension of? Are there reps on the road? Are there other operatives? Are they tool of trade vehicles? Are they work vehicles? Are they utes? Are they vans? What are they sign written like? What are the condition of the vans? Even before we go in there, you can get a quick read whether they maintain or whether they're all about running the vehicles into the ground. So all of these things. OH&S is a big thing. Environment's a big thing. Whole of life cost is a big thing. So understanding those three elements, you can even pick up the non-verbals before you even get in there. Once you're in there, the next step is the gatekeeper of reception. But then once you're physically face-to-face with the buyer or the manager or the fleet manager or the operative who's going to be a decision maker in this, could be the finance director, you'll quickly pick up what is important to them, what are their values, and what problems. The key word here is problem. What problem can you solve for them? Because if I'm the finance director, or you might be meeting with the HR person, HR will just want something that's going to attract and retain quality people. The finance director will want lowest cost, but as long as that person gets a good vehicle. The fleet manager will be, I'm cost driven, but I just need operationally to make sure I've got the best vehicles, because that's my biggest pain point, is the aggravation of the drivers complaining about the cars to me. So these are the things you need to be prepared with as far as how am I going to address each one of those three individuals should they be in the meeting, and tailor my presentation to that when I'm in there. So you've got to be able to be flexible. You've got to know what you're going to offer.
So what are the type of questions you'll be asking, Mark? How do you phrase the questions and how do you position them to get the right information back?
Well, the first thing, John, you raise a very good point. The first thing you've got to do is ask questions. And the best thing is that you've got 2 ears, 1 mouth. 2 ears to listen, 1 mouth to ask the question. So you ask a question and then you zip it. You shut up and you let the customer tell you the story. And open questions, there'll be situational questions. Situational questions don't really drive much on the emotion side of things. Oh, yes, I've got a fleet of 50 cars. Oh, yeah, and they're all 4-wheel drives. Oh, yes, they're all diesel. And yes, I keep them for 5 years. They're situational questions. You need to know those. The important phase is, once you get past the situational questions, is to ask the problem questions. But you need to set the tone. Situation, yeah, I can send it to you in an email. But where you're going to get the value, where you're going to get the gem that's going to take you to the next step, are the questions that you ask around, what are the problems that you have with your current state? Because if they're happy with their current state, it's going to be hard for you to move them to something else. But most people won't be happy with their current state. So you need to find out, well, what's the issue with the current state? And they might say, well, our fuel bill's too high given the price of the fuel's going up, or we're under pressure to go for EV, or we're under pressure to switch away from tool of trade vehicles, and everyone wants to get a salary package and choose their own car, or we're going to get a car allowances. So what solution can you give for that? But the important bit is you ask a question, what's the problem? The next question you want to ask, once you've established the problem, is you want to understand the implications. So what you need to do is build the pain with the customer. But you're not building the pain because of you. You're just building on their pain. So if I've got a problem where I've got this guy giving me, he's in my neck, or this this CEO, she's in my neck about getting more EVs on the fleet. Well, I need to put more charge points in, and I need to convince the staff that they're going to have charge points, they're going to be enough range anxiety to get around, and they'll be able to do their jobs, and they won't run out of charge. So what are the implications if you get it wrong? Oh, implications are I'll have people off-road. Oh, is that a good thing? No, that's bad. Oh, and then you'd have complaints. Yeah, I am. That's bad. So you build on the implication. So then you hit them with the needs payoff. All right, so what are my needs payoff? My needs payoff is if I could give you a vehicle that has range, that gets rid of that range anxiety, and I can give you a vehicle that gives you a good residual value, does that get the finance director off your case? Or if you're the finance director, does that make you happy? Oh, yes, it will, because it means I can tick that box of implication there. And if I don't have the problem with the staff, yes, that ticks my back. That's a needs payoff for me. So I'm ticking the box of needs payoff. But I won't know to say that unless I ask the questions. But these are the issues that you have with a face-to-face. In a face-to-face, the beauty that you have is you can look around the room while they're talking. You can see that, oh, they've got a competitor baseball cap on the shelf behind them, or there's a picture of them with a signed football from another competitor. So you can see, okay, these are the people that I'm up against that are emotionally linked into this particular client. Because people don't keep these artifacts in their offices unless there's a link. And that's the beauty of hospitality, is you get emotionally attached to the client, or they have an emotional attachment to you in some way, shape or form. So the challenges in the post-COVID world is, all right, you're relying on Zoom. How can you pick up on the non-verbals? How can you have a quality conversation with that customer or prospect where you're seeing any of that? So you really have to focus on building the pain and getting to what are their main problems and building that pain and then giving them a solution to the pain. But you can only give the solution once you've built the pain. If you go in with a solution straight away, you will be less effective than your competitor that's going in there and building the pain about this is the problem that this customer has. But the downside is you're not going to get all those other elements. You're not going to see what's in the front yard. You're not going to necessarily see the building. And if you do meet with them off-site, usually they're off-site away from their work. So this is where you really have to build on the personal connection first, wherever possible. If you're at a cafe just down the road near where they live, you really need to build that trust. And hey, this is Mark, and I'm here to help you. And that's how there has to be the premise of when you make the appointment with them to actually get that. The challenge will be getting the appointment made. There still is a reluctance, but the best thing is this will be behind us. These times will not last forever, and there will be a transition back to a blend of office and home. But the challenge is, how do you then get that appointment? So John, your thoughts on effective ways of connecting to people before you do the face-to-face?
I think it's always a difficult one, Mark. So you have to try and do things, because if you go in a hard sell, it already puts people on the offensive. They say, oh no, we already got a solution and we're not interested. So it's trying to break that down and trying to find ways to touch base with people, but not necessarily having to sell to them. Because if you try and sell in that first instance, I think it makes it very difficult. So it's trying to find ways to build contact, but not necessarily sell to them. And then once you've started the discussion, hopefully things will come out of that discussion. We say, well, now, there's an issue here, there's a problem there. And then you can try and build on that and see if you can find some sort of solution for them.
The key there, and the way I see it, John, a very effective tool is LinkedIn from a B2B and B2G perspective, because those operatives usually have a little bit more time on their hand and they will be looking at LinkedIn in the main. So LinkedIn is a way that you can target those operatives first and foremost with communication. Now, the downside is if you just go straight in cold, more than likely than not, if they don't know you, they don't know who you are, and they don't know your brand, you're really an uphill battle. If you're part of a group or a brand that people want to know more about or want to connect with, lead in with that brand. Use that brand to your advantage, that you can help them with X, because this is the opening of the door is the important part. Challenger brands, being a BDM with a challenger brand, is hard work. So in those instances, you need to lead in with some sort of information. It's like the newsletter type process of old school, but it's still a good tool to use to say, here's some information. and use LinkedIn to target those people from an informative perspective to set up and give yourself some credibility so that when you do reach out, they can say, oh yeah, there's John, I've seen him on LinkedIn, that makes sense, I'll talk to him, all right? They're the opportunities and the processes with this new world or the new normal now, which is this hybrid face-to-face and also business development in the online space.
And Mark, in this sort of space we're at the moment, do you think it's worth reaching out and trying to set up those face-to-face meetings for
Absolutely.
coffee, or should you be doing that, or should you still hold off for the time being?
Fortune favours the brave. And the B2B operatives getting out there and being face-to-face will put you ahead of the game of your opposition. Getting out and face-to-face, there is no substitute for it. Zoom is a fantastic tool to deal with remoteness, but really if you want to embrace it and get the most out of it, there is no substitute for face-to-face. Because the reason why face-to-face works the best, it addresses 3 elements of communication: verbal, visual, and kinesthetic. So Zoom is purely verbal and visual. You're not getting the kinesthetic human element that we have. And that gets back to that whole primal brain that we have as individuals. It's that gut feel. I'm physically with you. When I'm physically with you, all 5 senses come into play. There's a sense of touch from a shaking of a hand, even though you need to use hand sanitizer, but there's that. There's the smell, there's the listening, there's the taste if you're having a coffee. I remember I had a good coffee when I was with John. We had a good conversation, all right? There's the cookie that we had if need be, or a croissant. If you're taking out for a breakfast meeting, it's a nice meal. Yes, I remember this really good meal. Geez, the place was fantastic. The burgers or the smell of the eggs were amazing. These are the elements that people will remember. People don't necessarily remember what you say, but they remember how you made them feel. And that's why if the faster you can get back to a face-to-face in some way, shape or form, even the delivery of a proposal, delivering it in person or somehow having a human connection will put you as an advantage to someone who's not doing it.
If you can't get that face-to-face meeting and have to have a Zoom meeting, what else can you do on that Zoom meeting to try and build that rapport with the customer or the client?
Well, it's the same process with that face-to-face. You've got to ask the questions, get them to tell you the story, build on the pain points, and then come in with a solution. Coming in with a solution early days, or just going in with feature, like, oh, we've got this, we've got that, and relying on a machine gun approach is going to disconnect them because you're up against it anyway because you don't have the kinesthetic connection. So these are the key elements of making sure that any communication you do, if your emails have to be really spot on, you've got to have images in your emails to make them engaging. Engage as much as possible with short points, have facts in there, have pricing, have data, because if data is what they need, if they need to make a decision based on X, Y, and Z from a financial perspective, from an operational perspective, from an OH&S perspective, you need to have all those elements in that communication that you're having with them, in those emails with them. So you basically have to be outbound with your email, communicate, and the same goes with your communication with LinkedIn. So, images are very important to have an engaging and conversation with those individuals. And then moving to the Zoom stage, if you can get that Zoom meeting, getting them to engage with you, that they actually want to connect, but also making sure you've got your backgrounds, etc., right as well, that you're looking professional with them. There's all the basics of the tech, but don't make it look like you're a 2-bit operator. You want to be as professional as possible. Still have your shorts on, have your jacket on if need be, present well, but these are the important bit is that get them to a stage where they can trust you and they all want to do business with you. It is a tricky world because the email blasts that you do, it's the outbound work that you do that are the critical pieces. You need to have, obviously, your CRM. You need to have the tools with LinkedIn. You could even use some Facebook support or Instagram to just tell a bit of an event story. The other element, the 3 elements of social media, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, tell a story about you. That's the opportunity for you to do a virtual event, if you like. Oh, this is our How to Drive program. Here's the product. Wow, okay. So I've stumbled across this. Oh, there's a brand I'm interested in. Oh, John's associated with that brand. All right, there you go. But I move on. But then the next time John reaches out to me, maybe with a picture of what I've already seen in his communication. Oh, there's that picture I saw. Oh, there's that guy. Okay. Oh, he wants to have a catch up with me. So we have a few email exchanges. Then through the email exchange, it's, okay, can we have a Zoom meeting? Just inviting someone to a Zoom straight away is going to be hard work because they're going to say, go away. Whereas if we've had a few email exchanges, we've built a little bit of rapport, it's then the Zoom meeting. And then maybe a phone number that we can have a conversation old school, offline, and then have a Zoom. Because getting to the Zoom stage is starting to get a bit more serious in the conversation. But that's as long as I'm actually having my camera on. Camera off means there's low trust. Camera on means there's trust. And this is the trust element is the bit that's going to get you the best outcome. But the key is going to be get ahead of the game and not sit back. You want to get out there as much as possible, as early as possible. But if in the meantime, use the technology to your advantage. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Hopefully you got something out of it as far as the B2B and B2G space. It is a specialist field and a very rewarding one.
Yeah, if you like what you heard, follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, or visit our website, autocurrents.com.
We've got 2 great books that we reference and that we've been reading, which is the Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and also the Franklin Covey, Speed of Trust. We have the links below if you want to find out more about these 2 fantastic books. They will help you immensely in helping you on your journey to sell more product and ideally make more money. 2 books, well worth reading. The links are below with our Amazon partner.
Thanks very much for listening, and we'll speak to you again next week.